I am Cam Rogers. How we doing? This is the 49ers Report. Check me out on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. So I got you caught up with all of the news and rumors. Let's take a look at our whopping 20 free agents. I'm going name by name here, giving you all the analysis you need. Let's start things off with one, Jimmy Garoppolo, because why not? So he, of course, is the priority for the 49ers. And it's more likely than not that this guy is going to get a long-term deal. Despite the fake news that you heard earlier, Garoppolo is going to be the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. And like I talked about at the top of the show, it would be, from a monetary standpoint, cheaper to sign Garoppolo to a long-term deal rather than doing the franchise tag thing year in and year out. So John Lynch is buying in. Kyle Shanahan is buying in. Jimmy G wants the security, and so I think it's a foregone conclusion that the San Francisco 49ers will lock in Garoppolo as their long-term quarterback. If they franchise tag him for 1 year, I guess I could kind of understand it. I talked about it actually in the previous episode that maybe with the small sample size of Garoppolo at quarterback for the 49ers, you want to give him a full year under center. I get that. But it makes more sense to give him the long-term deal, at least from a monetary standpoint. Let's get into the next free agent here, Carlos Hyde, running back. For some reason, this guy gets a bad rap, but he really wasn't all that bad in the grand scheme of things in his 2017 campaign. Yeah, his yards per carry dropped from 4.6 to 3.9 from 2016 to 2017. And I do see a scenario here where Carlos Hyde probably doesn't remain with the San Francisco 49ers, so he's going to ask for money around the Latavius Murray, Gio Bernard range, 4.5 million, 5 million, something around there, and it's very possible that the San Francisco 49ers let Carlos Hyde kind of test the free agent waters out there. You still have Matt Breida, and of course, there's that guy Joe Williams that they want to try out too. So keep an eye on those two, and perhaps Carlos Hyde moving on. All right, let's move on to another running back, and this is Raheem Mostert, and he's an exclusive rights free agent, which essentially means he can't negotiate with other teams. His rights belong exclusively to the 49ers unless another team puts out an offer sheet and all that stuff, and we can get into the details of that if that scenario arises. But, of course, he was placed on IR on November 29th, and he was a pretty solid returner for his time with the 49ers. So despite his season being cut due to injury, I think he's a solid special teams player, and he will be able to make an impact with the San Francisco 49ers come 2018. All right, let's get into this guy now. Wide receiver Louis Murphy, unrestricted free agent, and most of these guys will be unrestricted free agents, by the way. I think Murphy is likely to move on. I think there's a good young crop there for the 49ers at the wide receiver position. Of course, most notably, Trent Taylor had a pretty solid campaign when Garoppolo was there at the quarterback position. And also, the 49ers are likely to grab a pretty darn good wide receiver out of free agency, whether it's an Allen Robinson, assuming he doesn't get the franchise tag from the Jaguars, or perhaps a Jarvis Landry. Yes, everybody in the comments section saying, well, Jarvis Landry is a slot wide receiver. We don't need him, but he's a fantastic talent. And if Landry or Robinson come into the fold, I think it's a situation where Louis Murphy can kind of get pushed down the depth chart, and the 49ers don't really consider him a priority, so he could be moving on there. Let's go to the tight end position now. Logan Paulson. So he's not going to light up any scoreboards with his offensive numbers. He's particularly a blocking tight end. Paulson played in 14 games for the 49ers, but did not record a reception despite logging 147 offensive snaps. And you have George Kittle, you have Garrett Selleck. They are here to stay, of course, so Paulson is nothing more than a reserve guy. He does have the history with Shanahan from their time in Washington, and perhaps Paulson signs a friendly deal to kind of be a reliable blocker there for the 49ers. All right, let's get to the offensive line here. This is a big one. Daniel Kilgore, center for the 49ers. Could he go out and test the free agent waters? Well, Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't want him to. In fact, Garoppolo is one of the highest proponents of Kilgore, have good chemistry together. That's been the reports out there. And you look at the Pro Football Focus grade, it's nothing to really celebrate. 24th ranked among centers was Kilgore there. So, look, the center market in free agency really isn't there. And in the draft, you're not seeing many big-time names at center. What really matters at that position is comfort. And if Garoppolo is comfortable with Kilgore, I think it would be smart for Daniel to remain in at center position for the 49ers and for the 49ers to get a deal done. So there he is at center, Mr. Daniel Kilgore. Let's stay at that position, though. Take a look at Tim Barnes. So he's more of a reserve guy at this position. Just played 2 total snaps in 2017. He's a depth guy. Never really been good in the NFL. I wouldn't be surprised to see him move along and maybe see the 49ers grab a center in the draft in the later rounds to see if perhaps they could compete with Kilgore in OTAs and training camp, etc. But if they do bring back Barnes, he's got a ceiling of a backup, essentially. So we know who he is. He's had enough reps at the position in his career to really know what he can do on the football field. All right, let's get to the guard position here. Brandon Fusco. This is a big one. Had a solid campaign, 21st ranked guard according to Pro Football Focus. And look, I could see a scenario where Fusco walks and the 49ers address the guard position with Quentin Nelson. And again, they have a lot of cap space to play with. So look at this scenario here. They cement Kilgore at the center position, right? They draft Quentin Nelson in that first round. Fantastic run blocker. They grab in free agency Andrew Norwell. So you have Norwell at guard, you have Quentin Nelson at guard, and those two will make Kilgore at center look better. So now you're solidifying the interior of that offensive line, which should be the priority because you want to protect your franchise and Jimmy Garoppolo. So Fusco could see a situation where he walks. Let's go to the tackle position. Garry Gilliam. So he got hurt this year after replacing Trent Brown because Brown got hurt. So there are a lot of injuries on the offensive line, particularly at tackle this year. Gilliam was placed on IR. And look, with Trent Brown coming back healthy, actually was very solid in pass protection when Brown was healthy. Joe Staley, of course, anchoring the other side. Gilliam may try to test his options elsewhere. I could see him becoming a starting tackle for a team that is in a dire need for that position. So Garry Gilliam could be heading on out. We shall see. All right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Douzable, defensive end, and he's well-traveled. He's been seen everywhere, and of course, he is going to be a free agent. And look, there's a lot of depth on the front line for the 49ers here where I could see a scenario that Douzable walks. You look at the 2017 stats for him, 17 tackles, 2 sacks. Overall was okay. He did have his fair share of spurts, particularly that Philadelphia Eagles game. Let's take a look at the stats here. 5 tackles, 2 sacks, a pass deflection, and 2 quarterback hits in that Eagles game. Problem was, after that, he kind of disappeared, and Carradine and Solomon Thomas, when they came back from injury, they started to get more reps in the starting rotation. You saw Douzable kind of see his role decrease a little bit. So we could see Douzable walk and test free agency as well. Speaking of Carradine, let's get to him. Defensive end for the San Francisco 49ers, of course. Injury paved the way for Solomon Thomas to take over at that position, and perhaps that's a little bit of a foreshadowing kind of a moment, right? Solomon Thomas perhaps being the future at the defensive end position. And Carradine spent 8 games on injured reserve with a knee injury, finished with 19 tackles, 1.5 sacks during the 2017 campaign. And he was slated to be the Leo defensive end prior to the season. And Leo is essentially kind of a hybrid guy that can do many different positions. And, Carradine, like I said, the injury kind of paved the way, the opportunity for Solomon Thomas to get more reps at the end, and with a wealth of youth at the defensive end position, I'd expect Tank to perhaps look elsewhere, but things could go the other way as well. Let's stay at defensive end here. Cassius Marsh. So he was a late addition to the San Francisco 49ers, claimed off waivers on November 22nd. And he's a solid, versatile player. You look at the numbers and his pass rushing ability, really not all that bad. Ranked 25th out of 68 4-3 defensive ends in their pass rush productivity rating, which is pretty darn good. And, you know, he's not a guy that's going to get a ton of snaps in a game, but Cassius Marsh, it would be a smart idea for the San Francisco 49ers to keep this guy. If you're looking at all the defensive ends here, I think Cassius Marsh may be the biggest priority, at least in terms of the free agents right now. So we're going to have him here as a potential guy to return to San Francisco. All right, let's go to another defensive end here, Aaron Lynch. So been a relative disappointment the last 2 seasons. In 2016, he served a 4-game suspension for a failed drug test, and he got an ankle injury that also limited him to 1.5 sacks in 7 games. And this season, he missed 4 games with a calf injury. So one has to wonder if the 49ers are essentially done with Aaron Lynch. And by the way, I want to know if you guys are done with this guy too. Let me know in the comments section, because a couple of disappointing seasons for Lynch, and now a free agent. The 49ers may be like, all right, see you later. So there is Aaron Lynch. Let's go to the interior of that defense now. Chris Jones, defensive tackle. So got hurt in September, and that's why we don't have any stats on him and no real sample size from the 2017 campaign, but he might be worth a low-end deal to bring him in and perhaps work him out in OTAs and training camp, see how he does in the competition. But at the end of the day, obviously, essentially a non-existent 2017 season for the 49ers. If they want to lock in with him and kind of see what they can get in 2018, maybe worth kind of a cheapish deal. All right, let's go to linebacker here. We're talking about Brock Coyle. And Coyle graded out as the 70th ranked linebacker according to Pro Football Focus. Played in all 16 games, folks, and saw a prominent role later in the season as injuries piled up at linebacker. Coyle was 4th on the team in total tackles, and overall, he was fairly productive. I could see a role for Coyle next season. He won't give you a lot of explosive plays, but he's a relatively reliable player. And you saw a lot of linebackers get hurt last year, folks, for the 49ers. Why not bring in Coyle to kind of add to that depth there? All right, so there's Coyle at LB. Let's go to DB now. Leon Hall. Ah, yes, the grizzled veteran. So Hall came into play after some injuries, more specifically to one Asa Jackson after he went on IR. I'll talk about him in a second. And Leon Hall, look, the best years for him are behind him, but I could see him play somewhat of a leadership role and continue that leadership role with a Keller, Witherspoon, and Williams as well, and perhaps whoever the 49ers draft addressing that secondary, the safety and corner position. So if Leon Hall is willing to not be Mr. Expensive, perhaps the 49ers could bring him in again and be that veteran in the back end. Perhaps Tremaine Johnson could be that veteran as well. We shall see. All right, I mentioned Asa Jackson. Here he is, defensive back. And I'm not sure if there's a role for this guy anywhere in the NFL at this point. The 49ers signed Jackson a week into training camp after Zach Franklin was waived, and Jackson played 4 games on special teams and had 3 tackles before injuring his hamstring. And at 28, I'm just not sure if there's a future for Jackson in the NFL anymore, guys. So I could see Jackson moving on from the 49ers and perhaps head on to a practice squad or something like that, but he is certainly not part of the future for the secondary for the 49ers. All right, let's take a look at Eric Reid now. So you see the 2017 stats right there, 52 tackles, 4 pass breakups, a couple of interceptions as well. He's a solid veteran that's going to rack up a fair share of tackles. Now, the question is, does Eric Reid want to leave the San Francisco 49ers after it was kind of an awkward 2017 season? So Eric Reid lost his starting safety job after returning to injury, and the 49ers put him at linebacker for a bit, and that really didn't sit well with Reid. And then Reid eventually got put back at safety after, some injuries kind of followed that, and so, yeah, it got really awkward. So I don't know if Eric Reid has any animosity towards the 49ers with him moving around and all that stuff, but you look at the situation, you got Jimmy Ward, Jaquiski Tart as well. Tart's going to be a fantastic player in the back end there. Perhaps it could be time for the 49ers and Eric Reid to cut ties. All right, let's stay in this secondary here. Antone Exum. All right, so the situation with him. So he was signed after Garry Gilliam went down with an injury. Only played 41 snaps in 2017, finished the season second on the depth chart at left corner behind Ahkello Witherspoon, believe it or not. He's a 6th-round pick from the 2014 draft, arrived with the 49ers in November of 2017. He's a good player to sign to a low-end kind of deal, kind of like a Chris Jones situation on that defensive front. So why not bring him in? You know, he's made some plays before with the Minnesota Vikings, so perhaps I could see some scenario here where the San Francisco 49ers go ahead and lock in Exum for maybe a 1-year prove-it type of deal. All right, and finally, this guy has been pretty darn polarizing. Donte Johnson, the 18th ranked corner according to Pro Football Focus. It was a brutal year for Johnson. He got a ton of snaps, but he just wasn't good when he got all of those snaps. So with the 49ers perhaps looking to the corner position in the 1st or 2nd round, whoever they go, it could be a scenario where the 49ers are like, all right, Johnson, rough season for you. Our fans are kind of mad at you too. How about you go ahead and try the free agency market and see what you can do. And maybe he comes back on a cheaper deal or what have you. But Donte Johnson really was not all that good and caused a lot of head-scratching moments for 49ers fans out there. All right, folks, so there is your rundown for all of the free agents for the San Francisco 49ers. So which free agent is the 2nd highest priority for you out there? And, of course, I say the 2nd highest priority because, well, there's that guy named Jimmy Garoppolo who's the number 1 priority. So here are your options. You got Daniel Kilgore, your center. Give us a heart for him. Carlos Hyde, give us a wow face. Eric Reid, give us a laughing face. And a like for Cassius Marsh. Be sure to leave your comments as well. We do appreciate you being part of the 49ers Report. I am Cam Rogers. Check me out on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. This has been the 49ers Report. We thank you for tuning into the program. Be sure to like San Francisco 49ers by Chat Sports on Facebook, and you'll stay updated with all the latest news surrounding the 49ers. Take care, everybody.